having pretty horrible nightmares.
I would wake up in the middle of the night, sweats.
I started drinking a lot.
I felt worthless.
I guess I never recognized it in myself.
Eventually, one day I just walked into the VA hospital and said I'd like to see somebody.
Don't suffer alone. You gotta find that link with somebody that'll make you let it go.
It all starts with going to the VA. There's a whole community of veterans that just want to help you out.
It's for the guys who couldn't come back, so you owe it to them to live well, because they're not here with their families.
Visit MakeTheConnection.net.
Talk 1470, WWNN Pompano Beach, Boca Raton, Miami, Fort Lauderdale.
Talk 1470 with more of what you need to know. Tune in Thursdays at 5 o'clock for Ask the Experts with Steve-O and get it straight from the experts on Talk 1470 WNN.
If you suffer with diabetes, there's a 25% chance that you'll develop a foot ulcer that can lead to severe health consequences, including amputation. At the Soul Authority, at little or no cost, you can receive your very own therapeutic shoes and custom inserts. Medicare recipients are entitled to 1 pair of quality diabetic shoes and 3 custom inserts. Call the Soul Authority today, 954-597-7060.
If you've decided to get back to feeling good again like you used to feel, then you're invited to tune in to the Dr. Bob Martin Show. Hi, I'm Dr. Bob, at your service Sunday mornings at 10 on Talk 1470 WNN.
Whether I'm training for a marathon, kickboxing, or lifting, I train to add muscle and build my inner strength. I'm always working to increase my reps and beat my own best time. I am proud that I was born this way, driven. That's why I serve in the United States Coast Guard. You can find me on a Coast Guard cutter, along with my shipmates, who are a lot like me, driven and committed to our country and the safety of our citizens. We collect maritime intelligence. We catch drug smugglers approaching our coasts, and we're ready to respond to emergency calls from vessels in distress. 24/7, no matter our mission, we expect the very best from each other. We were born for this. We were born for the Coast Guard.
Were you born ready for the Coast Guard? Learn more at GoCoastGuard.com.
Sponsored by the United States Coast Guard in cooperation with the Florida Association of Broadcasters and this station.
What you want to know. What you need to know. Talk 1470, WNN.
The opinions expressed in the following sponsored program are strictly those of the host, guests, and callers, and not necessarily those of the station, its staff, management, or sponsors. Welcome to the Golf and Travel Show, the place to fine-tune your swing, dress for the course, club, or cruise, and get tips on the best places to play and stay at the right price. Vacation or staycation, host Dan Shub, along with his expert co-hosts and guests, will tell you where to go. To play golf and vacation, that is. Now, here's Dan.
Welcome to the Golf and Travel Show. I'm your host, Dan Shub, and tonight, like we always do this time of the week, we're going to talk a little bit of golf. We're going to talk a bunch of travel, and of course, we got a great show in store for you tonight. In just a few minutes, we'll be chatting with our guest, and that is the co-founder and CEO of Zipski, Evan Hung. And Zipski is a place where you can go to kind of find out about what's going on in different places around the world, but from the locals and the local perspective. They kind of hook you up with people in the know so that you can go check out restaurants and bars and clubs and theaters and things that you might not know otherwise, shops to shop at, that kind of stuff. And I thought it was pretty cool, so we're going to find out a little bit more about that. And, of course, I'm glad to be back. Last week I was, there was a couple of things going on. I had a trip planned to Las Vegas, which, as you all know, I do quite frequently. And unfortunately, Hurricane Matthew decided to change my plans for me. My flight got canceled on Southwest, and then I wasn't sure if I could get out or not. And of course, at that point, the storm was scheduled to come back on Tuesday, which is the day I was scheduled to fly back from Las Vegas. So I thought that getting stuck with cancellations and delays and things like that twice on one trip was just not something I was looking forward to. So what happened is it all started when Southwest canceled my flight out there. And it's an interesting thing because in case all of you or any of you have never had this happen to you before, if you have a round trip and your first flight gets canceled, automatically your return flight gets canceled too. So you need to know that. In this particular case, I was not flying round trip on Southwest. I was flying back on JetBlue, which created a whole different dilemma for me. Because Southwest, of course, they canceled my flight due to weather, so I was due a full credit for that flight. I could change it in for whatever, and I'll talk about that later. But I had to then call up JetBlue and explain to JetBlue that I was canceling my trip due to a hurricane. Of course, they only had me scheduled flying from Las Vegas to Fort Lauderdale several days later, and I wasn't eligible for any refunds or special consideration from the storm. Well, I'm pleased to say that JetBlue, they stepped it up. They immediately offered a full refund anyway. So I was quite pleased with them. And I took care of that easily online. Southwest was not as easy to do online. It was a little bit complex, like sometimes it is to get a refund from anybody anywhere. But I did call them up, and they answered the phone within a couple of minutes of waiting on hold, which is also unusual for customer service these days. And I had a lovely gentleman who took care of my flight and my colleague's flight, who I also had booked on the same ticket. And they not only did that, but I needed to go back out there in March for another event that I need to go for, and the price was a little bit higher. But they didn't charge me the extra fee. They just swapped my ticket out without the extra fee. So kudos to them as well. Also, I was staying at the Mirage, and by the time I canceled, it was within 72 hours, and their policy is that you have to notify them prior to 72 hours if you want to get a refund on your deposit. My colleague and myself, we both had about $260 worth of deposits that the Mirage did a great job as well and gave a full refund. Due to the hurricane, again, they don't have that in their policy. There was no hurricane in Las Vegas, so just good customer service. The trade show I was exhibiting at, actually Freeman, who's the company that helps out with the furniture and the carpeting and receiving all your shipping and stuff, full refund, no questions asked. The show itself I was exhibiting at, I have not heard back from them yet. So I'm not going to mention any names, but hopefully they'll step it up too. When weather strikes, there's just not much you could do. I noticed that some of the cruise ships that were heading from here to the Caribbean changed their course and went up to New York. So imagine, getting on your cruise liner and you're expecting a nice little holiday in the Caribbean and, you end up in a totally different place. And, it's part of the deal when you cruise. Obviously, safety comes first, and that's really what matters. But I want to talk a little bit about safety in just a minute too. But this is the segment that we usually talk some golf, so I guess I need to talk a little bit of golf. I was fortunate last Tuesday to have been invited by the folks from Web.com to play in the Web.com Tour Championship Pro-Am. So that was on Tuesday. So thank you to Web.com. And it was a very, very interesting event. A week or two ago, we had on the architect who redesigned this golf club, the Atlantic Beach Country Club, which is just east of Jacksonville, right near the ocean. And first of all, a beautiful job, great country club, nice clubhouse. The golf course was beautiful. This was a couple of days before the hurricane, yet they were already getting some of the bands and stuff heading up into the Jacksonville area. I have to say that playing golf, I love golf, but I am a fair weather golfer. I don't play competitively, and I'm not used to playing in the pouring rain. And I would say probably at least 4 or 5 of the holes, maybe more, that we played in was in pouring rain, 25, 30 mile an hour wind gusts. And, one of the guys that I was playing with, he got up to the tee and he took a swing and his club flew out of his hands, his beautiful TaylorMade driver, went over a creek that was to the left side of the tee box, over the fence and into somebody's backyard. there was no way. The water ran all the way down the hole and then some. Believe it or not, some of the folks that worked at the club or were running the event, they got in touch with the people that lived at that house. The guy had his club back like in about 20 minutes. It was amazing. So, but playing in the rain like that, being able to hold on to your club is just extremely, extremely difficult. And we had the opportunity to play with our pro. His name was CT Pan. He's from Taiwan, China. He represented China in Rio for the Olympics. When I played with him a week or so ago, he was ranked 181 in the world rankings. He's now 182. I hope I didn't have anything to do with that. But the irony is that I played in this Pro-Am on Tuesday. On Wednesday, the tour canceled the event because the golf course was in an evacuation zone, and they really had no choice. So the pros, including my partner CT, he never did get to play his event, even though he was kind enough to join me playing in my event. So very interesting. But the other unfortunate part for folks like CT is that I believe the top 10 finishers of that event were going to earn their PGA Tour card. When the event got canceled, there's no time on the schedule to reschedule it and no time to get any of them onto the PGA Tour because the PGA Tour started up again last night, Thursday, or yesterday. Of course, a couple of years ago, they started that wraparound schedule where, it used to be a calendar year. They'd start in Hawaii in January. So it's a little bit confusing now, starting the new year in October. And, of course, the big news was our neighbor just to the north, Mr. Woods. He made a big announcement that he was going to come out and play this weekend. And then a couple of days later, he came out with another really big announcement that he's not going to play in the Safeway event. So everybody was kind of looking forward to it. He's only ranked right now, I believe, number 780 or so in the world rankings, which is kind of weird when you think about it. Yet, of course, due to his potential and his past and his impact, the media, the galleries, everybody's looking for him to come back. There are so many great golfers out there, and he, if he's lucky, might be one of them. But he certainly won't be the Tiger of old. Yet everybody wants to see him back, myself included, because who knows, there still may be just a little bit left in him. So hopefully taking another month or two, it looks like, to get his body back in shape. He claims actually his body, he says, is fine. The injuries are okay. It's really his game, his physical and mental aspects of his game that he just doesn't feel is quite right. So we'll see. So that's a little bit of golf. But I did mention, I was talking a little bit about the storm. And I did get a message from my friends over at FEMA, and they wanted me to kind of make this announcement to everybody. And I know that the people listening down closer to here in Boca weren't quite affected as bad by the storms, but there are things going on in our state that FEMA is a little bit concerned about. So up where I live, I did have damage to my roof, and we had no power for 3 days up on the Treasure Coast. But they did want everybody to just be aware that if you did have any work that you needed to have done on your house, that there's a lot of fraudulent building contractors. Make sure that you only use licensed ones, and make sure that they have insurance, liability, and workers' comp. And don't pay for the whole thing up front because you may never get it done. Also, though, keep in mind, even if you didn't have any issues, there are a lot of folks that are making phone calls and sending emails, and they're looking for post-disaster donations for the folks that were affected. And really be very, very careful. Never pay cash. Make sure you get receipts. Be very, very concerned about places that are on the phone or on the internet and stuff to make sure that they're legitimate. A lot of them are not. And last but not least, if anybody ever comes a knocking on your door and says that they're a state or federal official with FEMA, be careful. Make sure that, that they have the proper ID and whatnot, whether it's by phone or email or in person. They never ask for money, people from FEMA. And, one last word of caution. I went through a couple of direct hits about 10 years ago, and I hope FEMA is better than they were then. I'm doing this to help them out, but to be perfectly honest, they had some major problems and issues of their own. And you got to be careful when you're dealing with them as well. When you're dependent upon the government for their help these days, you're really in trouble. So just be careful even with FEMA. They do have a hotline if you need their help. For fraud, it's 866-720-5721. For price gouging, if anybody's trying to rip you off, 866-966-7226. And you can also check them out at FEMA.gov/disaster 4280. I guess that's the number for Matthew. Also, a lot of the golf courses, of course, up and down the state were tremendously affected. I heard Sea Island got it really bad. Obviously, the Charleston area. Most of those golf courses have gotten their acts back together. Most of them are up and running. Some of them do need a little bit more time. So if you did plan a vacation anywhere in Georgia or the Carolinas, you may want to just make sure that everything that you had planned, if you had tee times planned, that the golf courses are open and operating the way they're supposed to be. By the way, also, I wanted to mention that next week, one of our guests is going to be a gentleman by the name of Ralph Cochran. And he's the director of the Ralph Cochran Golf Classic, and it benefits Food for the Poor. And that's a charity that helps the hungry folks in Haiti. And don't forget that Haiti and the Bahamas were really devastated by this storm as well. And this, by the way, I didn't mention that Ralph Cochran, he's 11 years old. And he's already, I think, raised $50,000 or $60,000 for the poor people in Haiti. So he's going to be doing that, that golf tournament again. So we're going to be talking to him next week about it. So, for the folks that need help, hopefully help is on the way. And for the folks that donate their time like Ralph, well, thanks on behalf of everybody. All right, what we're going to do is we're going to take a quick break, and then we're going to be back, and we're going to be talking to Evan Hung of Zipski and find out a little bit more about how you can find friends pretty much all over the world to help you out with your travels. We'll be right back in just a minute or so. Stay tuned. And we are back. Time for a quick message from our sponsor, Labor Finders. If your business needs industrial workers or if you're looking for work, you got to call Labor Finders. Labor Finders places for temporary or temporary to hire opportunities for skilled, semi-skilled, or general labor positions such as plumbers, electricians, concrete workers, forklift operators, office clerical, storm cleanup, and so much more. Labor Finders has almost 200 offices nationwide. Near here in Boca Raton, they have offices in Homestead, Miami, Fort Lauderdale, West Palm Beach, and in Jupiter. So if you need legal, insured, hard workers, or if you're looking for work, call Labor Finders toll free at 800-864-7749. That's 800-864-7749, or visit laborfinders.com. And we are back. And, when I travel, obviously a lot of times I'm in the know. I've got people at visitors and convention bureaus that meet me and they show me around and they take me to the cool places. But if you're not so fortunate, it's kind of nice to be on the inside, have a secret friend, somebody that you can kind of reach out to and kind of show you the way. So when I heard about Zipski, I thought that this is perfect for all of our listeners who love to travel. If you need a little helping hand, local knowledge, that this might be just for you. So to find out a little bit more about it and how you can take advantage of it, we've got the CEO and co-founder, Evan Hung, with us. Evan, are you there?
I am. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure. It's an absolute pleasure. Yeah, because obviously, I mean, we talk travel every Friday night. Been doing this show for several years now, and there's always advice that people need. There's horror stories out there, and if you can have a friend who can steer you in the right direction, it could save you a lot of grief, I'm sure. But before we get to Zipski, it's an unusual product, something that's relatively new that I didn't hear about it. I'm always curious to find out what brought somebody like you to something like this. So how is it that, where were you before and how did you kind of find your way to start up this Zipski?
Sure. So the story was always very personal for me when it comes to the foundation of Zipski. I was fortunate enough to meet some local friends when I was traveling in Europe in college and had an amazing experience with them. They showed me a lot of hospitality, and I really got to see a new side of the city that I feel like I wouldn't have originally had. And then later, a few years later, when I was working out here in Denver, where we're based, I met an Austrian individual who, while playing pickup soccer in a park, we became really good friends. And I decided to kind of pay it forward and show him around Denver and all the best things that we had to do and give him a little slice of American life. And he then kind of paid it forward again to me, extending an invitation to visit him in Innsbruck. While I was there, I encountered the same issue where I was alone while he was taking classes and really wanted to experience Innsbruck in a different light and found that there was really no way for me to do so. My background's in e-commerce and creating digital experiences, so when I thought of the idea, it was just very natural. I just figured I would give it a shot and try to build it.
See, with your IT background and digital background, it's great. When you have an idea, you know how to go and execute it. So many people I talk to, they have these great ideas. They're going to create this, they're going to create that, but they don't even know where to begin. So it just never happens. So it's fortunate that you had two passions that you were able to kind of marry together.
Very much so.
Now, so, you know, I always think about some of these things, or often think about these things. I spoke to somebody recently who had something somewhat similar where it's more of a travel dating thing where people in different parts of the world can find a way to get together, and travel is kind of the backbone of it. But I always wonder about meeting strangers. I mean, I'm a little bit shy myself, and, you know, sometimes people are a little nervous about strangers or whatnot. I mean, what kind of suggestions do you have when you're meeting somebody digitally from another part of the world and you're going to kind of become friends?
Well, I think that a lot of the normal rules that we go by in our day-to-day interactions still apply. You know, if you're doing some research on the individual, you get a bad vibe, perhaps you shouldn't meet up with them. The other side of it, too, though, more optimistically, is I feel like with the tools that exist today, when you think about Airbnb and Uber and all these other game-changing companies, we are really starting to kind of be a bit more connected in a real sense. You know, there's just oftentimes this saying that in an ever-connected world, digitally, we feel like we don't really connect with each other. But the fact that in the past few years we have shown a willingness to go to strangers' homes and get into strangers' cars, it's made it a lot more accessible. With platforms like ours, we very much encourage safety, and we have a rating and review system that helps you, really vet out the people that you meet with. The good thing about it as well is, with us, we generally promote meeting in a public place, things like that. If you have some semblance of street smarts, I think a lot of it applies to meeting strangers. But the other side of it too is there's a lot of really friendly people out there, and we really hope that something like Zipski helps them get together.
Well, I was born and raised in New York metropolitan area, and it had a bad rap, and everybody was always afraid to talk to everybody. And if you ever were lost in New York, it's amazing how the locals would help you out, and they were so much nicer than anybody ever thought they would be. So I understand what you're saying. Now you've been in business since 2015, right?
Correct.
Now, can you explain a little bit maybe the size of your network and how, the geography of it? So, I mean, if I wanted to travel anywhere in the world, can I find somebody at this point, or what are the numbers kind of like?
We're still fairly early, so we have 850 plus users in over 40 countries. We've been focusing on finding some really great people on the ground, locals, for you to interact with wherever you go. I would say that for most countries in most major cities, we do have at least a few people there. Where we really do have great coverage, though, so far, Washington, D.C., New York City, Athens, Greece, London, England, and Taipei, Taiwan. Those are kind of the places where we have lots and lots of amazing people. But in general, our team oftentimes monitors our users and sees where we have signups. We have a few pretty great people in most cities. So I think that at this point, you can pretty much find a Zipski kind of experience wherever it is that you go.
And when you talk about a Zipski kind of experience, why don't you talk a little bit about some of the really important or frequent or cool things that people might do differently had they not had Zipski?
I think that when it comes to having these types of experiences before, it's very much due to luck. For someone like me, I'm naturally an extrovert, and it's not necessarily easy, but easier for me to go to a bar and strike up a conversation with a local. But I think that something like Zipski really gives people, it empowers people to have these experiences if they want to, even for extroverts like myself. But then even if you're not as brave to go and just talk to a stranger, I think that knowing that there's a community of like-minded individuals who want to interact with each other and connect with culture, it's a really great place to start.
Yeah, it's interesting because I'm that kind of guy. I'm much more shy in person. Here I am talking on the radio, and it doesn't bother me at all. But I do prefer to kind of meet somebody like that first and kind of get to know somebody as opposed to just walking up to some stranger and starting a conversation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we found that a lot of users are very similar, and what we try to do is give you an opportunity to connect based off of some sort of mutual interest and, hopefully personality. So, for instance, if you're interested in basketball, and you meet someone from Paris who's also interested in following the NBA or even the local league, I would say that's someone, golf and travel, golfers from Spain. How do they golf differently? Is there a different culture that's involved? I think that's something that, we all are really interested in, and we would all really love to learn from each other.
Well, when you talk about golf, especially places like Europe, often there are a lot of private clubs that you could possibly play at, but you might need a member to invite you. So if you can meet somebody like that, that's a pretty good thing.
Definitely.
Now, do you find out about a lot of the stories? Is there a lot of feedback that you get that you can share, maybe some really cool stories?
Yeah, we're starting to get a little bit of feedback trickling in. We just launched in July, so things are still fairly new, but we actually have one member that I recently spoke with. She's doing a across-the-country van trip where she has been using Zipski or wherever there are people everywhere that she goes, and she's told me that it was an incredible way to just make a city more accessible and feel somewhat less lonely, because in some of the cities that she goes to, she already has friends. She might have friends that tag along for certain parts of her trip. But it's always nice to have this tool in her pocket that she can use to really, engage with people wherever she is. So that's one of the ones that we really, really love to hear.
Why don't you explain a little bit about the actual process? I mean, is there a fee to join? Do you become a member? How do you actually do it? Is it online? Is it an app? How does it work?
Sure. Yeah, it's accessible via web at Zipski.com or via iOS, so iPhone at the moment in the App Store. We are releasing our Android application in the next 2 weeks, so be on the lookout for that. But it's free to use. What you essentially do is you become a member of the Zipski ecosystem and community. We have a simple 6-question questionnaire for the sign-up process, and you can give a little bit of information about yourself and what it is that you're interested in. And as you fill out your profile, you can also fill out things like what languages that you speak, your education, your job, the things that kind of make you you. And through that, you can then search for users, so either guides or travelers. That's kind of the vernacular that we use. So if it's a local, ideally someone that's guiding the city that you're visiting, or if you want to meet up with fellow travelers in a particular city, we give you that option as well. So it's pretty straightforward. It's think about Airbnb, the way that you advertise homes, but in the sense of rather than advertising homes, you're kind of advertising yourself.
Now, being that I don't do radio all day, I'm a marketer by trade. That's what I do. I'm curious, of course, is how do you guys make a living off of this? If you're not charging anything to the users, are you selling ads that go on there? Are you using any user information to market to them? Exactly what's in it for you, besides being happy and helping people?
So we have the ability for advertising, of course. The other side of it, too, is we will have a better understanding of how people travel. I think that one of those things that we can learn with our platform is, to some degree, how users behave on there. So if they're interested, for instance, if a male who's in his late 20s who has gone to college in Nebraska who likes Italian food, we might be able to find out that they also, have a higher propensity to go to places like New York or DC or perhaps even places in Europe. That those insights are really, really valuable for, other companies when they are launching targeted advertising campaigns and things like that. And through that and partnerships with other companies, that's really where the monetization piece comes from.
So you're building a Zipski empire.
I think empire sounds a little evil, but something cool.
Well, I like it. Obviously, that's why I invited you to come on, and I wanted to share it with all the listeners. So if anybody who's listening would like to take part in Zipski, you got one last chance to explain how easy it is and how to find you guys.
www.zipski.com. That's ZIPSKEE.com. We really believe that people make the culture, and that connecting with culture is the best part of traveling. If you've had these types of experiences before, I think that this is something that will really resonate with you. And if it's something that you haven't had before, give it a shot. I think that you'd be really surprised with how incredible it is to connect with the people that you that live in the places you visit.
Well, I couldn't have said it better, and that's why I had you on to say it instead of me.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
It's my pleasure. All right. Well, hopefully we'll talk to you again when you have a much bigger organization and you got tens of thousands of people worldwide working with you, and I'm hoping that happens for you.